Meeting of Wednesday, January 24th. We are coming to you tonight in person from the Savage Center. I'm going to please ask everyone in attendance to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so the first order of business is approval of minutes. There are three sets. Did we get the third one? Yes, that's right. 3 sets of minutes in your packet. There's the public meeting minutes from January 10th, and there are also 2 sets of executive session minutes from January 10th and from January 19th. Does anyone have any questions on the minutes in the packet tonight? Motion to approve. Moved by Teresa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by David. All those in favor?
Aye.
So that passes 5-0. Second item is correspondence. Dr. Thompson, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Great. Right along to the warrant report. This week, I signed warrants in the amounts of $1,865,574.63, $18,442.17, $45,401.04, $23,245.44, and $204,079.84 for a grand total of $2,156,743.12. Are there any questions on the warrant report this evening? Seeing none, we'll move right along into public comment. Reminder to the public that public comment can be accessed in 2 ways. When we are hybrid, you can call the superintendent's office up to noon the day of the meeting to receive a link to the meeting, or you can put your name on the list to speak publicly at the meeting. You can also arrive at the meeting and sign in at that time. Is anyone here for public comment? Dr. Thompson, did anyone sign up for public comment?
No one has registered, Madam Chair.
Fabulous. So at 7:07, I will declare public comment closed. Okay, right on to our next item, to our appearances. Tonight we have 2 appearances. So our first appearance is Ms. Lisa Bourgeois, here to give us an ELL update. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How is everyone tonight?
Good. Fabulous. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so yes, I'm here to kind of give a more specific update around staffing and our population of students. So you have before you a slide deck that kind of complements the report that was submitted to FinCom in early to mid-December. Okay. So just to go through kind of what I'm going to focus on tonight are the role and responsibilities of the director role, teachers and paraprofessionals within our department, and just look at the growth of teachers in our department specifically over the last 3 school years. And then we'll look specifically at our multilingual population, discussing the increases over the last 5 years, our continuous growth, and just looking at a comparison of our multilingual students and our former English language students. So just to review and or identify that the role in which I play is to oversee the entire program of supports and services, which is inclusive of the curriculum for students preschool all the way up to grade 12, overseeing the process and organization of the identification, assessment, and programming for multilingual learners, which follows to the coordination, development, and implementation of EL programming, specifically around the curriculum piece, collaborating with the LPAC, building principals, district administration on relevant ELE-related issues, including staffing, programming, service delivery minutes, and teacher evaluations, manage the submission and monitoring of Title III and Title III 186 grant activities, and apply for additional applicable funding as it becomes available through DESE or any other funding source. ELE general budget planning and implementation for professional development opportunities, curriculum resources, and technology software. And additionally, provide guidance and support for children and those families who are experiencing homelessness. So just to take a look at kind of where we're at with the department, there's myself, and then we have 23 FTEs within the district, spread out all the way, of course, from kindergarten up to the high school level. And that would be 3 teachers over at the Willett. We have 5 ELE teachers, so 1 grade per teacher at the Balch, which is complementary to the population of students there because their ML population is about 1/3 of their student body. Then we have 2.4 at the Cleveland, 2 at Callahan, 2 at Oldham, and then 2.6 at the Prescott. So we have 1 teacher currently who goes back and forth between the Prescott and the Cleveland school, 3 full-time at the middle school, and then 3 at the high school. We also have 2.3 paras that are funded through the Title III grant and have been. If we look at the next slide, it shows kind of that growth with the increases that we've experienced, at least since my arrival in 21-22 up until this current school year. I should actually say 23-24, so I apologize. But again, you're going to see increases all across the district in regards to the teachers we've had to hire to support our students. Next, I just wanted to highlight, again, the growth that we've experienced. I could have definitely, as a note on the right, you'll see that the percentage averages still kind of stands at that 12%, but you'll see that the increase is steadily there and pretty consistent. We did have a little bit of kind of a dip after the pandemic full year of COVID, but we've clearly made up for that over the last 2 school years. And again, looking at that data and doing some calculations, if we stay on that trend of the continuous enrollment, then we're looking at a potential of about 18 to 19% of our student body being multilingual learners in September of school year 24-25. Just looking at annual growth on the next slide, from December of 22 to this past December, there is that, again, just showing that our population of multilingual students, those that are identified in an SEI program, we have a small number of opt-outs. I will say that since my arrival, I've changed the messaging and the protocols of how a family is able to opt out of services. And what that means is that they're opting out of the access to a specific ELE teacher, and they're still required to take the access every year regardless. So that used to be a sign-off by the parent, and when I came, I said we need to have a more personalized conversation. So now those conversations all go through me, and so that I'm able to explain the advantages of the program for their child. So we have seen a decrease in that. And then the last bar shows our increase of students who are newcomers to the country, not just obviously to Massachusetts. So again, the information on the right-hand side kind of just, again, iterates the growth that we've experienced. You know, we started off the school year with about 530 students, and we were up to 591 as of this report. And as of today, I think we're at 595. So it is continuing to grow daily. I would honestly say that at this point, our central registrar is rolling admissions to Norwood Public Schools. which is wonderful. It's great. But it does, especially at this time of the year, we're seeing an increase of our South American students and families moving to the area because, for those who know or don't know, their school year is at a different timeline than ours. They typically start school in midwinter and end around October, November. So we find that winter time, or these months, are when families will move and relocate, and in most cases are looking for an improvement to their lifestyle. And that is a trend not just here, but across, I would say, the state of Massachusetts. I definitely experienced that in my previous districts as well. And then the last slide was really just informative that we are kind of on trend again with, if you look at other districts, that around the middle school to high school area, you'll see the increase of former English language students. The reason I highlight that, especially if we look at CMS, this is 79 students that are multilingual learners, and we have 81 students who are former English learners. And it's important information to have because they're still part of our caseload. They're not receiving direct instruction. They're part of our caseload because we are required to monitor their progress for 4 years. So that allows us the opportunity that if there are areas that we are seeing they need some support, we might reconsider reclassifying them and bringing them back to ELE. So the state requires us to monitor those students for 4 years, and we have formalized forms that are communicated and shared with classroom teachers, content area teachers, and then that information is shared with families. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Bourgeois?
I had one question. No, I didn't. I don't actually. I can't. I think I answered it in the slide. Sorry.
Yep, Joan.
Thank you for the presentation. One of the hot topics in our town right now, right, is obviously. So do you anticipate that there'll be a need for increased staffing as a result of new arrivals to our community?
No, not yet,
Okay.
because quite honestly, whether it's new families from North Attleboro that are new to our country for whatever reasons, or if it's a family that arrived on their own tuition, it doesn't really warrant an increase in staffing. We always primarily, we're going to get to know our students first and gather information about them. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but my goal is to build capacity within our general classroom teachers and our content area teachers. Most certainly, we have an increase in a population that has, even since my arrival, has almost doubled. With that being said, we haven't doubled the workforce. And getting a teacher every time there's another group of students isn't best practice. That's certainly not the philosophy that I agree with. And knowing that we've shifted our programming to have our students in the classrooms and less pull out and less opportunity to be engaged in full native English speaking instruction, that is certainly going to help our model as well, and that will not require us to then have more ELE teachers. I would say even prior to any new arrivals or new family members that are joining our community, that's a number that's regularly watched and considered. Are there pockets? Sure. I know our high school numbers are over 100, and that is a lot. But we're also limited to the structure of the high school scheduling, right? So there's other variables that go into those conversations. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it requires that, because it's not just, oh, this is how many students we have and now we need to get a teacher. We already have a robust staff, and so the job now is to continue to provide appropriate professional development to increase the capacity of our educators that we already have. And as we know, our teachers are SEI endorsed, therefore they are legally required to provide instruction that is accessible for for all multilingual students.
Yeah, we've just heard in the community a lot of concern that the new arrivals that are being hosted by the state in our community are going to cause significant budget impacts. And it sounds like we have the capacity to handle the students who are coming to join us in a fashion that will allow them to get the same education that every Norwood student gets. And it will not be, there's not a fire run on.
This is definitely not a
Thank you.
fire run.
That's what,
And
that's what, yeah.
I would also say that of some of these students so there are a portion of students, and some are choosing to continue the rest of their school year at North Attleboro. Again, they always have the right to come to Norwood. But of the students who as of literally noon today, that are deciding to join us, a handful of them actually aren't multilingual students. So I think that's a really important point. Some may have been at some point and are now FELs, so there's some monitoring that may need to be done. But we're finding that we're getting students at varying levels.
And just to clarify, FEL is former English language, meaning that they started off in the ELL program and have since graduated to I don't want to say mainstream, but a monitoring status.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if I could just, I could just add a little bit, and Lisa and her staff are being very modest, but she and they have done a great job of improving our delivery of instruction, and they are very, very good at moving them from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 where they're in the general classroom, which is less impactful on staffing. So while we say no at this time, maybe a little bit, but I also will remind people that we are getting $104 a day from each student from the state to cover some of those additional costs as well. So, and there is in Chapter 70 increased money for English language learners. So, budget impact
Emery.
should be minimal.
So can you speak a little bit to the professional development? It sounds like you guys, it's been sort of, the trend has been for a while, and we've seen it being consistent, and there is a projection sort of based on like what we know. I would imagine that the professional development has benefited from this experience, right? Can you talk a little bit for the public about what that looks like for our teachers on whole, like to incorporate these students?
Most certainly. So my first year here, as is most cases, you're going to come in and learn and listen, and that's a lot of what I did. There were certainly some areas that needed to be addressed immediately because there were things that were out of compliance, so those things were addressed and that was successful. But through that process, it was very evident to me, and in my onboarding when I met with all of the building leaders in individual conversations, it was this intention to really get our multilingual students into the classrooms more frequently, more consistently, and how can we utilize the teachers that we have, meaning our EL teachers, to kind of go into that type of model. So that's kind of what was happening first year, and then I would say at Willett at the end of 21-22 is where we did some real specific work. At the time it was Steve Billhart and myself. We started off with kind of just going over the expectations of an SEI teacher, what those responsibilities look like. We talked about the population because that also, right, like what are we grounding our information in? And also that SEI teaching, ESL instruction is good teaching for all students. So anything that we do with students is going to be a positive effect on the entire classroom. So we did that specifically, and then we pulled in Stephanie West, who's our elementary literacy coordinator, and we had kind of back-to-back staff meetings with them to really hone in on specific skills, specific strategies that can be utilized when you're teaching instruction around literacy for students. Fast forward a little bit and we look at last year, and that type of kind of PD was then provided by myself in several of the buildings last year at the elementary level. And then coming to this year, one of the, after 2 years of doing this and learning again and listening, right? Like listening to what teachers need, what they are hoping to gain, and conversations all the way, right? district-wide and then all the way to the teacher level and vice versa, that what we were seeing is that there's not a lot of opportunity for oral language discourse. And that's, again, all students. We know that for all even native English students in classrooms, that really is not something that is always happening, that these opportunities to orally communicate, orally discuss, orally collaborate, any of those pieces. So with the arrival of Dr. Munoz, he has been really supportive of teaching us different ways to change our structures within the classroom setting and shift more to a cooperative learning style. So he's done that at the administrative level with us, and then we have been able to do some transitioning to the classroom. The way we've done that is providing that professional development specifically around that. So I'm looking up because I'm visual myself, so I'm going through the calendar. I did some of those structures that he started with us back in August. I started doing those with just my EL team. We then did a PD in November where we pulled in the elementary coordinators, including Stephanie West, Elizabeth Warren for science, and then Laura Donnelly for math. And we worked with the 1 through 5 groups. We had about an hour and a half with the 1st through 2nd grade teachers, and then 3rd through 5th in some way. But we did those structures with them. So up out of seats, moving around. So unlike group work, cooperative learning is making sure that everybody who's at the table and or in the classroom is accountable for what they're participating in for whatever the activity may be, right? So is there interdependency happening? Is everyone involved and engaged? Does everybody have equal responsibilities within that? So there are a multitude of structures that can be done for that. So we started there, we chose 2 specific structures, and we did that with them. Then in December, we did a lengthier professional development with the rewind. The end of November, I did the high school, very similar as what we did with the elementary. And then in December, we were able to, with the support of Margot, and of course, always the support of all the building leaders, we had 3 hours with the CMS staff, which was pretty awesome. So that entire thing was, I think we got through about 5 or 6 learning structures to provide, and really positive feedback. I actually just shared that with the department chairs today and Margot, that 75% of the teachers that completed the survey felt it was very good, helpful, productive. They felt strongly that it was a PD that they went to and that they could implement the next day. And that's really been the focus, is that we know as an administrative team that there have been a lot of new, whether it's specific curriculum or it's new initiatives or, so how can we complement all of that in a way that feels that it's not an add-on but an in addition to, or, so that has been very clear in our purpose of our communications at the start of those. And at the start of those conversations, as the slide deck, there have been a review of the populations, depending on the staff that's in front of us, of our multilingual students, a review of the growth, and there's always a response of, oh, wow, or I thought that, but I now seeing it, this, so again, we should always be grounding the work and making sure that we're seeing who our students are. And then, just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. So we did that at the high school, we did that at the middle school, and then we are now in the process of planning kind of a part 2 for the elementary crew. So they're going to be getting that on February 7th. Myself, and actually I won't be there, I'll have my secondary, but I'm working with the coordinators kind of in a capacity, because I've been able to do this now a few times, so that they can do that with the elementary people. And what we heard from our PD with them in November was they would like more time to use the structures and implement content. So that's going to be an intentional part of the professional development in a couple weeks.
I'm really glad I asked. It's so, I think it's important for people to hear about that. It's funny because yesterday was a half day, and I saw some parents at pickup, and they're like, what are we doing? What is happening? You know, and I'm like, I don't have the PD schedule in my head,
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting because to Joan's point that things are on people's minds, right? You know, whether it's what they hear, you know, but it's not necessarily the reality of what's going on, or whether it's, you know, why do we have these PD days? Well, we're equipping our teachers to
Yeah.
be able to deal with our challenges and serve our students in the best way.
Yeah.
And what I liked to hear you say, too, is about the feedback that is a consistent part that teachers can say, like, this is how this went, or this is what we would like next time, so that, you know, it's sustainable and it makes the difference, of course. So, thanks.
I did have one quick question. I apologize for not sending this in advance. So if you don't have the information, please do let me know. But, you know, you did mention about when you first came in, we were behind in a lot of metrics. So I am assuming now, a couple of years, you sound so optimistic. Are we caught up with all that? Are we like kind of more in line with what everyone's behind, and we're just kind of in line with everybody else at this point, or?
So in regards to our overall programming, what I can say is that we are still in our tiered focus monitoring of kind of still responding to the state on a few of those criteria. So I believe at the end of last year, I gave an update on the work that we did, and can most certainly plan to come back and give an update at the end of this year for that continuous work. So there were certainly, yes, there were things we definitely checked off the box. We met the criteria that the state was looking for, the Office of Language Acquisition out of DESE. With that being said, we are still actively working on completing our ELE curriculum. So we specifically are required, again by law, to have a K through 12 ELE curriculum. And that is, the way that I'm approaching that is so that it complements the standards versus complementing a curriculum that we've purchased. Because as we know, those can change. What we really want to have is something, again, that's sustainable. So that work started a little bit summer of '22. More work got done with it summer of '22. And interestingly enough, just was on the phone with Dr. Munoz this afternoon and saying, we really, we need to have some dedicated time to this. So we're trying to find some funding sources so that I can ideally grab a few of the teachers, if they're willing and able, to continue that work after school hours from now-ish, or after school vacation in February for the rest of the year. Otherwise, we have also now purchased Elevation, which is an incredible tool that basically pulls all of the data together for our population of students. So prior to, and again, I've been doing this now for about 14, 15 years as a teacher and in this role, that you talk to anyone and we have, the number of spreadsheets we have is insane. So this basically takes all of that and puts it into one area. And so Steph Bowden, I have to sing her praises, who is just incredible. We did a lot of back-end work in August with Elevation, who has been phenomenally wonderful, and talked about how we're matching the fields from Aspen and how all of this work gets transitioned over. So there are nightly updates, very similar to a lot of our other programming. But what I'm able to do is, for example, Dave needed some updated information today about something, so I can just go on there and I can search by school, I can search by ELP level, I can search by FEL, I can search by grade level, I can search just level 1s, I can search all our level 4s. And the awesomeness too is that all of their data that our students do in their benchmark assessments, so Renaissance, DIBELS, STAR, that also all comes in. So we literally, if a child is if there's any conversation around a child, whether it's for SST or even just as they're maybe going to another district, we can just pull up their file or their record and see all of that in one shot versus going to Aspen, the spreadsheet, into Renaissance, into multiple places. So that has certainly helped our organization and the way that we're able to output the needs. And then most certainly we've updated a lot of our forms. The next step for this summer for me and maybe one or two other teachers is to take some of the forms that I've implemented and move them into elevations. So we did that right away in September. I said that's my ultimate goal. I want to be able to not produce, but print out, for lack of a better word, all of the identification letters, because annually we have to notify families whether their child's continuing services or if they're being initially identified. So elevations, there's a format, things are already translated. I can reformat it to the way that it complements Norwood Public Schools, and then select who the kids are, and then that was done. So that was already a weight, like that was lifted off the teachers' plates in September, which helps them because then they can get their schedules, and then they're getting to kids sooner in the month of September rather than losing weeks of planning schedules, which
Great.
requires its own time, and we need them with the kids. So that was very successful too.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Ms. Bourgeois? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anytime.
All right, so next we have Ms. Semino to speak to us about some student services update and the staffing request.
Hello again.
Hello.
I'm going to be super quick tonight. So I just did a really high level overview of our specialized programs. Do you have my updated slides?
You want the next one?
Do you have my updated slides? I emailed them.
I have the ones that are in the agenda.
Yeah, those are not
Okay.
the notes. That's okay. I'll keep going.
No, you emailed them to me?
I did.
Okay, I can look at them.
Sorry. So currently, as you all are aware, we have multiple strands of specialized programming in district. We have not expanded our strands of specialized programming. However, we have expanded the number of classrooms serving students within those strands of programming. So very high level, we have the Little Mustangs Preschool Academy, which services our students age 3 until they are ready to go to kindergarten. We have a language-based learning disability program at the Balch. We have the Learning Exploratory Academic Program, better known as LEAP, at Oldham, Balch, CMS, and NHS. We have the Practical Application of Curriculum and Skills, PACS program. It's currently located at LMPA, Prescott, Oldham, CMS, and NHS. For the fall of 25, we will be expanding that to the Willett. So the K kiddos enrolled in the PACS program will be going to Willett in the fall of 25. Pragmatic Learning Center, which is located at Cleveland, CMS, and NHS. And then we have Teaching Academic and Social Skills Curriculum, which is our therapeutic program, located at Callahan, CMS, and NHS. And then we have our Bridges program, which is a transition program at CMS. And finally, we have our Live, Engage, Achieve, and Develop LEAD program, which services our 18 to 22-year-old population, and that's housed here at the Savage building. Very high level, looking at our student-facing staff, we currently have 37 FTEs of special education teachers, 27 FTE specialized program teachers. Paraprofessionals are 129.731, if we could get more exact. OT, we are 4.6 FTE. PT 2, SLPs, we have 10 FTE. We have a 0.1 visually impaired teacher and 4.0 FTE for BCBAs. At an administrative structure, we have psychologists, 2.6 in contracted services, as you are aware. We have 4 team chairs, 2 assistant director, and 1 director. So some quick enrollment statistics. As of October 1st, Sims report, we had 933 students on IEPs. This is 26.3% of our enrollments. Total students enrolled in specialized programs to date as of today is 214. which it is 23% of our eligible special education teachers. That number continues to grow, and we are internally having a lot of conversations about that. Overall, we have held steady at having around 21 to 22% of our population in specialized programs. However, our overall population continues to increase who's eligible for special education, so therefore the numbers in programs continue to increase. So overall, enrollment statistics, I gave you the 22-23 and 23-24 school year with our anticipated enrollment for 24-25. As you will see, the PACS program is anticipated to go up by 10 students. There are 12 students anticipated to go into kindergarten for the PACS program in the fall. The PLC is anticipated to go up by 13 students, and those 13 account for the rising first graders. So again, a huge jump in our population. LEAP 34, Bridges and Bright are 6, Task is 55, LBLD is 5, and LEAD is anticipated to be 6 for a total of 235 students. This is extremely fluid. We continue to get in on a daily basis move-ins and referrals for programming. So very high level, I don't even want to say this is exactly what's going to happen, but very high level, looking at what the potential changes are going to be. We will need 2 PACS teachers at the Willett. We'll need a PLC teacher at Cleveland. We need to increase our school adjustment counselor at the TASK program. Currently they have a 1.6. They don't even have a full-time dedicated person to the therapeutic program. We'll definitely need to increase our related services in order to support this increase in students. So 1.0 SLP at the elementary. We will need to do some shifting. When I say elementary, I'm also including Willett in that, because we will need to do some shifting, especially with the increase of the PACS program at the Willett, as well as an OT, looking at the LMPA and Willett population. So that's all I have for you tonight on specialized programs. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to start ahead of you guys. Quick question. So the PLC obviously is going up
Yes.
compared to this year, and you said it's the rising first graders.
Yes.
And then looking at our LMPA population, are we expecting that this is going to continue? Okay.
We have 11 kids enrolled in the PACS program already, and it's January, and we have a good probably dozen more that we're evaluating that potentially may need programming at LMPA. Yes, those
Yeah.
numbers are not.
Just for
yeah.
the public, this is not a one-time thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a continuing.
Yeah.
Teresa?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Before I forget, Dr. Thompson, can you just make sure we get the updated slides in the packet, since some of the numbers are a little bit different?
I will forward you her email
Okay, perfect, I appreciate it.
that she sent while I was eating dinner.
Sorry, I only had the LMPA numbers as of this afternoon.
No, that's okay.
So.
Most of it's the same, there's just a couple numbers
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to make sure I reference accurately going forward.
Mhm.
Can we talk a little bit more about the PACS program?
Yes.
So right now, elementary PACS is split between Prescott and Oldham.
Correct.
And we have 12 kindergartners coming
Yes.
into the PACS program.
Yes.
So there's 2 classrooms at the Prescott, right?
One. They share one
They share
classroom,
one
2
classroom.
teachers
Two
in
teachers,
one
one
classroom.
classroom. And at the Oldham, what is the current situation?
There are 2 different classrooms
Okay.
with 2 teachers.
So the 12 kindergartners cannot fit into the Prescott
They
because of
cannot.
space constraints.
Correct.
So is there a space at the Willett, or are we gonna have to move things around to make space?
He is going to have to move things around because we need a classroom with a bathroom.
Okay.
And we need a classroom with proximity to the sensory room.
Yep.
But as of this afternoon, he said he was gonna make it work. He's excited to have them come.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, like, there's always a give and take, right? Because of
Yeah.
the space constraints. So are we needing to reduce an art and music room? Like, what is being taken away to add in the backs at the Willett?
Yes.
Yes, and?
Yes, and those decisions have not been made.
They haven't been made yet.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had said that you are probably going to be asking for 2 FTEs
Yeah.
for the Willett program. So am I correct to assume that the teachers will stay at the Prescott or are we losing teachers at the Prescott to move them to
That's
the
what
village?
I asked.
I can't comment now on what teachers are gonna wanna go where.
Well, I
and
don't
do
mean like
what.
individually, but just the position. Like, we would still need two
We still need 2
FTEs
teachers
the
at Prescott, and we will need 2 at Willett, and they will most likely share a room like they do at Prescott.
Okay.
Kate?
Are the kids at the Prescott, are some of them younger that we've put there? I'm
The
remembering.
kindergarten is at the Prescott right now.
So will
and
those, since we're.
So kindergarten will, all kindergartners will go to Willett now,
Okay.
and 1st and 2nd grade will stay at the Prescott.
Now
With the
being
numbers.
next year.
Right.
And then 3rd, 4th, and 5th will, be at Old Town. And those are pretty big cohorts.
Yep.
And there's 7, there will be 7 3rd graders, and 8 or 9 4th and 5th graders.
This increase in this particular population is nationwide, it's not a local thing. So-
And to that point, Dr. Thompson, is this, what do you, I'm just thinking about what people, might be on people's minds. Is this related to learning, like some of the pandemic
No, the
situation?
students with this profile, the nature and severity of their disability is
It's-
significant. This is
Okay.
not, I mean, there may be some impact from COVID. I don't know that we'll ever be able to measure that.
Mhm.
But a lot of these students are nonverbal. They're using AAC devices to communicate, significant behavior dysregulation.
Mhm.
They are really, the nature and severity of their disability is significant.
Any other questions on the presentation?
Can we talk about the TASK program?
Sure.
Okay, so the TASK program, which is the therapeutic academic support, what is the C?
Therapeutic
It's on that
academic.
slide.
All these
Oh.
names are.
No, it's okay.
Curricula. No,
I need to
Teaching-
get that
Teaching
slide and
academics and
everything.
social curriculum.
Social curriculum, thank you. And I know we have talked previously, in other meetings with the school committee, that therapeutic part, we really need to do a better job, which is connected to what is probably gonna be a request for you to increase the counselor. And we've tried over the last couple of years to even get it to where it is, but as your data shows us, the TASK program is, just like the PACS program, rapidly growing. And you had shared with us before, there were a number of students in the 1st grade in the district that need to get into the TASK program. Was it 11, 14? What was the 1st grade number?
I don't know where
Ish.
we're at right now, because
That's okay.
some of them, we've been able to find
Oh.
other alternatives for them to
Okay.
keep them in their home schools.
Yeah.
Yeah. At one point in time, we had 18 referrals to the program, so that
Yeah.
might be what you're referring
Okay,
to.
might be.
And 11 of them were 1st graders.
that's what I'm thinking.
But they weren't all for TASK.
Okay. And are we in a good place with TASK teachers? Is it just the counselor position we're anticipating we need to increase for next year, or also teachers?
I don't anticipate needing to increase the teacher. We had a preliminary talked about increasing a task teacher at the middle school.
Yeah.
We do not need to do that, given our numbers now. But I don't anticipate needing to increase the teachers. I do think there are ancillary supports that need to go into that group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And again, the idea is to have the therapeutic part of the therapeutic program be a capital T and not a small t. And if it is, then we move them into a regular classroom faster.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, on to the fun part.
Always, right? I never come without a request. Tonight I am requesting a 2.0 paraprofessionals, both as one for students transitioning into the LMPA. Both students have pretty significant and complicated profiles that will require them to have adult support one-on-one at all times for safety and medical reasons.
Any questions on this request? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the request for 2 paraprofessionals for one-to-ones?
So moved.
Moved by Kate, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Teresa. All those in favor?
Can I?
Oh, sorry.
So I just, can I ask?
Discussion, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Nino, we talked about this in the budget subcommittee, but just for everybody. You're trying to be more proactive, ahead of the curve, make
Yes.
sure we can start to hire, have the support in place. But you are doing evaluations of these students that,
Yes.
as they come in, and again, we're just trying to
Right.
change the structure of how we add things.
Right,
correct?
given the way the transition happens into LMPA, we do get preliminary information about students before they actually come in to do their evaluation. So both of these students are due to come in March and April, but given the information we have about them ahead of time, we would like to be proactive. It may very well be that once we evaluate them, we cannot meet their needs in district. These are both very complicated profiles. So I am just trying to be proactive in the process so that if we will do our best to maintain them in district with the right supports, but I may be coming back to you at some point in time and saying, we don't need those paraprofessionals. We've had to seek alternative educational opportunities.
Then I'm just going to ask the question that I know that I already asked Lisa. So this appears to predate any state mandated moves into our community, anything like that.
This has nothing to do with that.
So none of these are as a result of
Has
anything the
absolutely
state is
nothing-
doing, so we shouldn't
No,
pursue funding from the
This has
state.
absolutely nothing to do with that. One of these students is moving in, and the other student is in EI transitioning to us, both residents of Norwood.
Great. Any other questions before we vote?
Oh,
I'm just sorry. Everyone was quiet, so I was like, let's go. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kate?
Aye.
Thank you.
I was like, what do you want me to?
Just all of a sudden I'm against it.
Alrighty,
Thank you, ladies.
thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Lori.
you.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, so moving on to our next item is the superintendent report.
Yep. So we're going to keep it a little short tonight, but we're going to talk a little bit about our new arrivals. We have a new high school resource officer and a little reflection on celebrating Martin Luther King in our schools. So our new arrival families will be moving to Norwood this week. Most school-age children have chosen to remain in the previous district. We will have 13 students attending schools in Norwood starting next week. As Mrs. Bourgeois pointed out, that could change, people could change their mind, but that is the initial piece, and I will remind everybody that we do get $104.85 or something along that line a day. No, I'm not kidding. For educational costs from the state, it is reimbursable, and it's about a quarter behind, if I'm correct. Mr. Wells? Yes. All right, so.
Carson, did we find out the mechanism? Is that coming directly to the schools? Is it going to the
Comes directly to the
municipalities?
schools.
Directly to the schools.
Yep.
Okay.
We will have 1 preschooler, 2 kindergartners, 3 in grade 1, 1 in grade 4, 5 middle school students, and 1 high school students. And we will be able to transport them with Norwood Public Schools transportation. We do not have to hire out or do anything else at this point in time. This, we do not need to add any staff to meet these needs. They have been strategically placed so that they can be with existing multilingual programming and levels based on their access scores, which, because we're in the previous district, we were able to get. And we will be fully registering them at the end of this week to start on. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Officer John Rooney. He will be our new school resource officer at the high school. Officer Rooney has served as an interim school resource officer at the high school for the last year, a little more than a year. But I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Officer Jamie Mahoney for all of his service, not only to the town of Norwood, but also to the Norwood Public Schools, and wish him a wonderful retirement. As you know, we just celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and I just want to highlight a few things. So we spent a lot of time reading and listening to Dr. King's speeches and learning about his actions, thinking about Dr. King's dream and our own dreams going forward and what that means and what that should be, and how Dr. King's work impacts our lives today and in the future. And you can see some of the artwork and activities, flip back here, that the students were working on. So I want to thank the principals for sharing that with me today. And that is the end of the report.
questions for Dr. Thompson? Great. All right, so we are going to move right into budget. Ms. Stewart, would you like to give the budget subcommittee update?
Sure. So in your packet, you have a copy of the agenda and the link to the materials from our last subcommittee meeting that we had on January 18th. During that meeting, we discussed a few things that you already heard about from Ms. Semino. But we also spent time with Dr. Munez. He came and he gave us an update on budgetary needs for curriculum assessment in PD. You can see in the agenda the link to the memo that he had shared with us, just getting the discussion started. This current year's budget for PD was approximately $80,000, allocated between PD, conference registrations, stipends, and outside PD providers. Dr. Munez is currently analyzing money in the operating budget as well as in grants and the different title funds. He's also looking at the ESSER 3 funding that ends in September of 2024 to figure out how we may be able to approach funding this area of PD in a different manner for FY25. This is something he's working on with Dr. Thompson and Mr. Wells. So I would expect we have further conversation of this topic as we go through the FY25 process. But we did start to ask some questions and dig into where is the money coming from. As you may know, title funding is on the federal cycle. So when we know what money we're getting and when we get it is different than the state and local cycle. So sometimes we have things in our operating budget that can then be funded out of Title 1, 3, and 4, I think it is, that we talked about, right?
1, 2, 3, 4.
And two also? Okay, so all 4 of the title grants. We also spent some time talking with Dr. Munez, Dr. Taylor, and Ms. Semino about our long-term goal that we've been talking about in the district of doing an equity-based or needs-based budgeting approach. And there have been a number of challenges to that in the past, and there's some challenges looking ahead. I don't think we're going to solve it for FY25, but just being aware that, not every building in our district has the same level of need. The students are different, and we should be building our budget to meet the needs of the students in the building or in the program. One example is the behavioral interventionist position that we added last year for this budget, that it's one FTE shared between 5 elementary schools equally, but those 5 elementary schools, as you just heard from Ms. Semino, have very different student needs. So if we are to take a needs-based, equity-based lens approach to budgeting, it should really be where are the students' needs that need that position or positions the most. So just looking at structures and systems, perhaps a little bit differently than we have before. And just brainstorming what that may look like. We talked a lot about the FTE limitation that we have had to live under from FY19 to FY24 because of the override pledge, and how that has created, unfortunately, a lot of hardship in the district being able to move forward and not just being reactive, but planning. And obviously, this is a conversation that we're going to have to bring back to Budget Balancing Committee, and we're going to have to figure out now that that override pledge is over. But having a very arbitrary FTE limit does impact being able to change structures and systems. And of course, we understand there's not an unending supply of money, right? There's always going to be limitations in funding, but if you have the bottom line funding, it's really under the discretion of the district and the authority of the school committee to determine where does that funding go. Does it go into a position? Does it go into a program? Does it go into a tool? Does it go into a curriculum, et cetera? So that's just a conversation that we were having as a subcommittee. And I actually enjoyed that conversation, and I thought it was pretty productive, and I hope we can continue to have that type of approach to our budget discussions. So we finally set up a BBC meeting. It is next Thursday, January 31st. I believe it's 6:30. Anybody is welcome to attend. Anne Marie and I will be there. Dr. Thompson will be there. I believe Dr. Taylor and Mr. Wells will be there as well. The goal of that meeting is to figure out and agree as BBC what are the parameters in which we're moving forward with the FY25 budget. Because right now we don't know, and right now we don't have a number that we are supposed to be working towards. So hopefully after next Thursday we will have that. We meet again as a budget subcommittee on February 1st during that meeting. We'll continue to work on the FY25 budget process. We'll also check in with Mr. Wells on the budget to date report. That will come to the school committee at some point in February. We were planning to work further on the middle school staffing, but that is going to be bumped later in the month of February since Dr. Frasick has some other responsibilities. So that's what we talked about on the 18th. That's the plan for BBC. Any questions, any feedback, anything you want Anne Marie and I to take forward?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So with the equity budgeting,
Yeah.
I feel like this might have been talked about before, but are you guys looking at other districts? Are there models that exist that you're able to study and see, like, if it would be applicable and helpful?
Yeah, this is work that has
Just
started
hasn't-
and stopped a couple
Yeah.
of times over the last couple of years. So there is a folder on the drive that I could find and send out to everybody again of some research and articles in other districts that have done it. Again, I don't think with everything going on, we're going to
Yeah.
be able to do like true equity-based budgeting FY25, but just having that conversation of what would that look like, what does that mean, and then in the BBC discussion, just to share that we may at some point pivot to a different approach. But yes, there are models, there is some research we collected, and I can resend that back out to the committee if you like.
I don't have a fully formed thought that I want to, subject everyone to, so I'm gonna end it there. I'm gonna keep thinking about it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, just
yeah,
one,
yes.
Anne Marie, I'm sorry.
Yep.
So for the parameters that we're looking for that we don't have yet
Mhm.
from our counterpart or our cohort, our partners, how would you say we're super behind, or we're gonna be all right?
Well, considering I tend to be the overly stressed, I hate not having a plan person, how about I let somebody else answer that question?
All right. Fair enough.
I mean, our process is we're gonna pull the numbers together. It's just we're kind of unsure of where to move until we have a target to actually talk about. I mean, we're looking at everything. We're talking about what's being asked for, and we're carefully considering all of those things. You know, as we're having our meetings, we're certainly prioritizing in collaboration with our team to figure out exactly what we may move forward with. But until we know a number, it's a little hard to kind of throw the dart without the dartboard being there.
So,
Right.
So essentially, the town hasn't given you, normally the town will give you some sort of percentage. So generally speaking, on the school side, we say like 2 to 2.5%, just like COLA costs that are sort of fixed and built in. Normally, again, speaking in generalities, it might be 3.5, but the town has not given you guys a number to sort of operate off of.
Right. And I again, I'm almost 2 months at this point, so I'm not sure what Norwood's process normally is.
Yep.
I'm used to, as early as July 1st being thrown my number, so.
It's
you know,
usually a little bit
It's,
sooner than this.
yeah.
It's usually sooner than this, and it's just hard to have a productive work for this
yeah.
team at this
Yeah.
point, the budget team at this point.
Yeah, we're-
Just trying.
Yeah, we're also coming off the first year of the override pledge, where we knew exactly what our percentage was gonna be every single year,
I
because
see,
it was
so
within the
people are-
override pledge. So I think it's kind of a little bit of a growing pain.
Got it.
With, and then obviously with, still onboarding, somebody still coming in on the town side.
Right.
The finance director on the town side hasn't started yet, so I think there's just been, unfortunately, behind. We got kind of used to knowing for 5 years exactly what we were working within, and it kind of, perfect storm of things to not get that information.
When do we normally get it? Like you're saying, some people it's in July. Like what's typical?
I'm used to seeing it, by November. It's usually when I'm used to it. Every district's a little bit different, every municipality is a little bit different, but generally, like I said, some are way more upfront about it, and they want me at that whatever number it is. Starting in July, they let me know clearly what they want. But generally, by November, I'm used to seeing something that we have a kind of a direction on, because that's when we really start to kind of form everything up. But again, every process is a little different, and to the point made, there's a lot of change that has occurred.
Shifting, yeah. Thanks.
Including myself, so.
Right. It
Exactly.
is. It's been a lot of.
Yeah.
It's true. Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like as Anne Marie was saying, like having that override pledge and that very prescriptive, this is what year 1 through 5 is gonna look like, was very helpful. And then it's always been like in January, February, like, oh, we're waiting for the governor's budget, we're waiting for the cherry sheet. That's always been part of we need those numbers to figure out any additional growth, because that's the Chapter 70 money in part. Before the override, there was just that arbitrary 55-45 split. So there was also some, like the schools would know they had like this base amount of money to plan for, but we don't have a split and we don't have the parameters of the override right now.
Well, and, you know, speaking to the change and the shifting, also everything was turned upside down, you know, and our needs have incredibly changed, you know. So I would imagine the conversations are all needing to be different than they once were. So yeah, that's hard when you're taking out of a not cut and paste, but you know, moving into like an unknown territory.
Yep.
Makes sense. But yeah.
However, Kate, if we leave that meeting on January 31st and we still don't have numbers, then me being overly stressed and wanting the plan is totally legit.
Right, yeah, hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think I'll be there too.
I'm really, really hopeful that we'll have some answers after that meeting.
Yeah.
So the governor's budget is out, is that today or yesterday?
Today it came out. It has not been translated into cherry sheets yet.
Yeah, so
it's a-
Cherry Street sheets is supposed to come tomorrow along with Chapter 78.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have some more information.
That'd be great if they come tomorrow.
Which is
That's-
better than we
That's
were.
what they're saying,
Yeah.
so.
Which is better than we were at last year because we were
Mhm.
with the election, then
Yep.
we were behind.
Yep.
So at least that, they're throwing us a bone.
Yep, we'll have some answers.
Yep.
And just as a reminder of the process, like the governor's budget isn't the end-all be-all. However, historically, that is foundation, and if the budget's gonna change, it increases through the Senate and the House. It doesn't usually go down. So having that governor's budget gives you a little bit of a, okay, this is the minimum we're working towards.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I said that, hopefully it doesn't
I
change.
know,
I know,
you said it out loud.
You put it out into the universe.
I know, all those shifting things.
Any other questions? Okay. So we'll move to the next item. Actually, so the next item, I meant to remove and did not remove it. I apologize. I was on here as a placeholder. There is a capital outlay meeting coming up the day before the BBC meeting. So it's a fun week of budget type meetings next week. So on Tuesday, there will be a capital outlay meeting, 6:30 in the FinCom room. Again, also open to the public if people want to join that, or I believe it should be carried. It will be carried on NCM, it usually is, if anyone would like to watch it that way. But we will discuss capital outlay at that meeting, but there is nothing that we need to vote on at this time. There's nothing that we're bringing forward right now to the capital outlay. So we are
Yeah,
good.
and, you know, we did have our central office meeting today. We did start talking about this, and you all know that we do have a 5-year plan. Joe and Paul Riccardi, Joe Kidd and Paul Riccardi are already on that. They will be looking to finalize and refresh. I don't expect a lot of changes. One change on facilities is the fact that we did not do the Savage this year, so that would bump theoretically into next year, along with the Cleveland, I believe, parking lots I'm talking about. We are looking at a lab refresh at the high school for graphic arts. We are looking at teacher desktops refresh, network switches and access points, somewhere around 160, 170,000. As a reminder for those at home and on town meeting, the schools do come in the spring for technology because it aligns with the reimbursement.
E-rate.
The E-rate reimbursement, thanks. Otherwise, we basically are rolling the dice. We may or may not get the money. We'll have a good idea of what money we will get, and that will influence the ask, as opposed to asking for more money and tying up the town's money. So that's why we do it that way. It's not that we like to go twice, but it's strategic to make sure that we are asking the town to encumber the minimum in the E-rate cycle. So, but Joe and Paul are working on that. We're looking at a date of bringing those numbers, those capital requests to you in March, the 7th. That is the date there. Okay?
And then that would line up with the capital outlay voting for the
Trying to
plan.
line up
Yep,
for
yes,
once.
we
Yep.
want to line up.
Yep.
Yes, I know the E-rate because I had to ask about 100 times why we went in the spring because I couldn't get through my thick head. So I now completely understand and will never forget E-rate. Any questions on capital outlay? Great. So we're going to move to the next item, long-term agenda review. As is our policy, we get to review the long-term agenda once a month. However, I usually take this time to just say, look at the long-term agenda. If there's anything glaring, we can talk about it now, but if not, we can talk about agenda offline. Is there anything we need to discuss tonight specifically? Yes.
Just a couple things. I made some comments, most of them I know you and Dr. Thompson will look through.
Yep.
Just a couple items. So our next meeting on February 7th, I know there's some things we may be adding on that night related to the superintendent search. So just a recommendation of mine, since I know that process could take like a good 1.5 hours, keep the rest of the agenda light. But we did already confirm with the SAC, so I would like to not move them if possible. And then if Mr. Wells is ready for the quarterly report on February 7th, I would say to keep that, but obviously that needs to get bumped to February 14th. We have some wiggle room.
Like, he looks so horrified by that prospect.
I am swimming in analytics right now, so.
I mean, 9 hours of spreadsheets and then 1 hour of PowerPoint. I mean, come on.
I know.
Totally want to spend Valentine's Day getting a budget.
Yeah.
I promised to bring a big box of chocolates.
I was gonna say we need chocolate.
So for February 14th,
Yes.
it annoys me that there are doubles right there. Can you move the school
Yeah,
committee budget
absolutely.
version A to down there?
Yeah,
And
it
can
was,
we just-
one was meant to just be like
Yeah.
and because yeah, and then,
And do we want to just put on February 14th, budget quarterly report question mark, so we have that hold?
yeah,
Just
we
in
can do
case
that.
if it gets bumped there, and then we can just make sure we keep the 14th relatively light, because I think,
I'd like to keep all the meetings relatively light, but that's just
So
me.
the deliberation and appointment is meant to be now on the 7th. I know we're gonna talk about it later, but
Yep.
that's still
Yeah,
on the
that's-
14th.
that's-
yeah,
yes.
so, but it's good to hold both, because we can do that. So that looks good through to March.
Just in case.
And then,
Stop.
Anne-Marie, it's on there somewhere, but I just wanted to talk a little bit, and Dr. Thompson, you brought this up for us before, that, the school committee will have to decide around the strategic plan since it's ending, and I think we should try to have that conversation, or at least start that conversation February 14th if we can, or, yeah. Because we need to give direction to Dr. Thompson and the admin team, and then we usually ask the principals to tie the school improvement plans into the strategic plan. And I'm just wondering, with the cycle of steps that are coming for 2 years, does it make sense for them to do a 2-year, or do we go back to a 1-year cycle just for this year? That's something I think we need to think about and talk about. So that is one of my requests. And then there's a couple things listed on there in March that historically we've done in March, but I think we might need to bump till April. One is the review of the facilities MOU, and then the other is looking at the shared cost allocation agreement. As a reminder, we need to circle back to the issue of the compensated absences fund at some point, and that will influence the shared cost allocation agreement. So those two things in March may need to be bumped till April or even the beginning of May. And then just as a reminder, the past 3 years, we've updated our school committee manual handbook in February, just so it was ready to be sent out to anybody running for school committee. I don't think there's a heavy edit, just like some dates and maybe links and stuff, but that should probably be looked at in February. And then everything else that I put in the long-term agenda, I think Anne-Marie, you and Dr. Thompson can talk about, and it's pretty straightforward.
Did I miss anything that you said there?
No.
I don't think so. Okay.
I feel good.
Just checking. Because I was typing as people were talking. Awesome.
Oh, actually, I lied.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just reading my notes. I have 2 more. One is the food services contract. I just want to put it on our radar that we do have to negotiate that, and we have to notify them that we are entering, that we want to renegotiate. Otherwise, the contract rolls over as of July 1. So we should talk about that at an executive session at some point. And then the second thing, in Monday's budget workshop, some concerns were raised by the elementary principals, and I just want to request in whatever form, Dr. Thompson, you determine is appropriate, that information be brought to the school committee, what the elementary principals were talking about in terms of some opportunity and visioning, whether that's a school committee meeting, whether that's a strategic planning session, whatever forum is appropriate. If the rest of my colleagues agree, I would like to have that information shared with us at some point.
So as we're talking about the strategic plan, I'd like to think about moving the strategic plan to the 6th. or the,
To
I'm
March
sorry?
6th?
I'm not in favor of talking about the strategic plan on the 14th because our admin team is going to be busy with the superintendent search immediately following that. And I would like to make a proposal that we're actually asking our admin team to surface 2 or 3 things that are in our current plan over the next year, for the following year as a bridge strategic plan, and give the new superintendent a year to kind of get their feet. That's not the right, I was gonna say a metaphor that I lost in the middle of that. Feet wet, that are gonna get their feet wet, to get themselves underneath. That gives them a long enough time to kind of get a lay of the land, and understand where they're going. There's a 1-year bridge strategic plan in place that continues the work that we're doing. But I think we need heavy input from the central admin team. And then that allows us to start a longer-term strategic planning process, maybe 6 months into the new superintendent's goals. So the reason, so that is a long-winded rationale for moving it down a little bit, to let our admin team do all the extra work that needs to be done around kind of this final sprint of superintendent selection.
I'm not disagreeing with all of what you're saying, I just wanna have like that discussion that you just started, 'cause it's not on our agenda
Yes, me
tonight,
too. I
but
just don't want to
wanna-
have it on the
yeah,
14th.
Yeah, cause we do have to decide a bridge or what
Right.
we're looking for, yeah.
I would like for our admin team to have time to think about that before we have that conversation and come to the meeting prepared. So that's why I'm saying not the 14th.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. Okay, anything else? Okay. Alrighty, we will move to the next item, which is the Sheriff Task Force update. So I attended the Sheriff Task Force, it's a very lengthy name, Sheriff's Task Force for Substance Abuse and Mental Health. Is that correct? Yeah, close enough. It's really long. Norfolk County Sheriff's Department Task Force, yeah. Anyway, so it's about a monthly Zoom meeting with other school districts and public health departments and other people who are invested in mental health and youth substance abuse in Norfolk County, with the Norfolk County Sheriff's Department leading it. So I attended that virtually on Monday. This was actually a fairly short meeting, and I forwarded you all the materials from that actually just about 10 minutes ago, because it was sent to us fairly late, so I didn't have a chance to put it into the agenda. But the materials that I sent you were the presentation, Miss Julie Tokarowski, who is a licensed social worker who works for the Brookline Police Department, actually spoke to us about domestic violence and mental health. She had a really nice presentation about the different services, different, some different things around domestic violence. She talked about PTSD, chronic PTSD, some trauma-sensitive, cueing, some things like that. It was a good talk from her and some of the work that she does, her day-to-day in the court system and being an advocate. So that was a good presentation from her, and I've put her slides in that email that I forwarded to you. Also, just a couple of extra pamphlets that were in there. The Norfolk County Are You OK line, which is a free program for mostly elderly residents. So basically, you can receive a phone call between 6 to 10 a.m. every day from if you sign up for this program. Especially if you're maybe living alone, if you're an elderly person who is living at home, and you can get a phone call from the state to make sure you're okay each day. So it's actually a really nice program. If anybody is interested in more information on that, you certainly email us and I can give you more information, or you can look it up, the Norfolk County Residents Are You OK program. And the other thing in there is Meet Eddie the Comfort Dog. I'm sure Eddie can't hold a candle to Sally, so I mean, Eddie's just gonna have to get in line. But Eddie is awfully cute, so maybe, him and Sally together would make a really cute pair. So that is my update for the Norfolk County meeting. That we will meet again next month. I don't think the e-bite has been sent out yet, so We will update you when that happens. Any questions? Great. On to the next. Ms. Stewart, going to give us an interface referral report update.
Yes, so, in your packets, you have the report from the William James College Interface Referral System on the NORD activity during the period of June 1st to November 30th, 2023. So as a reminder, they generate a report twice a year for us. During June to the end of November, there were 45 cases from NORD residents who were seeking supports and mental health referrals. The school and the town have been in part of this since November 2018. And in that time, there have been 444 cases. So 444 NORD residents who have sought referrals to mental health support. It's a pretty good number. In the June to November report, there's a few trends that I just wanted to note. The first is a difference than what we've been seeing. Typically, we see that families, residents are seeking support more for children and teens than adults, but that changed this time. There were more people seeking support for adults, so 29 adults compared to only 16 of the pediatric population. Residents are still reporting that the number one way they are learning about this service is through the schools. So we are doing a great job as a school system getting information out there. The service report shows that there was an increase in people who were requesting counseling in Spanish. Predominantly, it's been English speakers utilizing this resource, so I'm glad to see that others are reaching out. Additionally, there have been more residents who have Mass Health and Medicaid that have been seeking to use the interface referral system, and we're also seeing an increase in ethnicities other than Caucasian. And the reason I point out all three of these is because we've been talking about for a while, really wanting to make sure that this system is known to all residents in Norwood, and this report is the first time since November 2018 that I'm seeing in the data that we are reaching diverse populations. And I would just encourage us, the schools in the town, to figure out more ways to get this out to more people. Anxiety remains the number one reason that residents are seeking support, closely followed by depression. And sadly, the number of residents seeking support around self-injury and suicidal ideation have increased in this report, and a reminder, they increased in the last report as well. So that is a concerning trend. In regards to the cases at the school, 8 students were from the high school, 4 were from the Coakley, 2 were from the Callahan, 1 from the Balch, and 1 from the Prescott. So this is an important service that I highly encourage the town of Norwood to continue to fund and our residents to continue utilizing it. You can call the hotline for free at 888-244-6843. And they are open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 5, and Tuesday and Thursday from 8 to 6. I know last year there was a little bit of a backlog. They were very overwhelmed, the interface system. I think they've added some staff, and they're now getting back to people a little bit quicker. But a reminder, you call and you let them know what type of support are you seeking, individual, child, family, anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, there's a bunch of stuff. You let them know what language your provider you prefer, what type of insurance you have, virtual or in person, and then once they do like an intake, they then look into what providers have availability and take your insurance. Because for anybody who's had to try to figure out mental health or healthcare on your own, you really have to be your own case manager sometimes. So they do that part for you, and then they call you back, I think within 2 weeks is what they say, and they try to do it quicker, and say, here are the providers that match what you're looking for. And then there is some follow-up as well, where they make sure where you're able to connect with that provider. Sometimes families ultimately choose not to go forward, but they do follow up, and then if more support is needed, they offer more support. So that is the report for the last 6 months.
Thank you. I just got a text that superintendent updated. Our MASC rep will be here at 9 is the hope. He's on target for 9.
Okay. So that. No.
I was asking, we can't do anything without him. We can't announce anything.
Well, that might be okay. I mean, we have, we can just move
Yeah, I think
that.
we might get to that.
Yeah.
We do everything else.
And then, worst case scenario, we will enter into executive session and then come back. Or we could take a quick, brief recess if it's going to be close. I think we have a few more items, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so any questions for Teresa on the interface report?
Just, was there an increase in the way we were getting the word out? Have we been doing that more, like, I was just curious if the usage is wider, so that means, was there a push to?
That's a great question. I mean, I know it was identified schools is still the number one way. I don't know, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Thompson, was there anything that we did different within the schools, or our usual channels just reaching more people?
We just used our usual channels.
So like Parent Square, I think there's like some flyers available in the schools.
Well, I would maybe, one factor that might be helping is we have been doing the youth mental health first aid trainings. And in those trainings, all of our staff get the resource guide.
Yep.
So, and the referral information is there, so maybe that's having an effect.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that.
That's the only thing I can think of that's different.
Yeah.
That's great. That training is great for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, at some point we should probably, back to long-term agenda, have Elizabeth
Ready to
Ashton come, who is the
LTA.
mental health first aid director, and obviously Dr. Taylor is working very close to her, and Lisa Bourgeois is also a trainer. But I know, having gone through that training as well, like we get an email reminder from her every month, because you're supposed to be tracking, not confidential information, but if you do offer any type of mental health first aid to somebody, so if you talk to them or offer a resource, you're supposed to fill out a form so she can track, and I would be interested in actually what her data collection is, because I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question, Lucy.
Maybe sometime in the spring when we're through budget.
Does
That
it
would
go
be
up on the
good.
NCM carousel? The interface information, because it's for the town, right?
It's for the whole town.
Yeah, I'm just curious. They could put it on their carousel too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be useful.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, so let's move to the next item, is an update for the student services, RFP timeline. Dr. Taylor?
Good night, everyone. So this is just a quick update as a follow-up to a request that was made in the last meeting. So just to share the timeline, it has been elongated. As you see in the memo, we are aiming for a March 8th release of the RFP. We're hoping that a first draft will be completed by February 26th. The reason we've had to elongate the timeline is because we are making this a collaborative effort, and our department chairs and directors need time to actually do research and pull the information together in a way that's useful. So this is just a point of information to follow up on the request. There isn't a vote needed for this at this time.
That makes sense.
Any questions for Dr. Taylor on the timeline?
So if it goes out, you said it goes out, the plan is for it to go out March 8th,
We're aiming for March 8th.
and then it's meant to be out for?
It has to be out for about a month to
Okay.
6 weeks in order to give vendors time to actually create the proposal. Another factor that may change this is that there have been recent requests for getting input from a larger, broader group of stakeholders. So if we do that, that is going to elongate this timeline even further.
And so what, okay. But there's still a little wiggle room if it's, because it needs to be decided, chosen by
Late spring.
late spring. Okay. I think it's smart to make it a more comprehensive and have more buy-in and have the research that you need, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
And just for background, obviously we're coming, we asked for the update today for the timeline, because I think originally when we got this approved at town meeting, the original intent was to have one of our milestones be today. So we wanted to make sure we're updating the community on exactly what is going on and what the timeline shift is. And that's why I hear Dr. Taylor saying we aim to, because really this is, it's fluid, with everybody. Everyone's very busy and working very hard on this, but of course, if we don't make an exact date, so we wanted to make sure that the community was updated on what the progress of this project is.
Can we go back to Kate's question?
Yep.
Kate, did you feel a group was missing?
No, I think it's good to hear if they're having discussions and deciding that more people need to give input. That makes sense to me. I don't need to know about.
No, I'm sorry, I thought I had missed something, so I did not. I heard
Thank
you
you.
correctly.
No, just with something of this size and nature, we just, there have been some requests to make sure that there's some more community input than something we would normally do for the schools, and so we just want to make sure that's built into the timeline, to make sure we have that time to have those people give their feedback, and
Well, and the reality.
do it, to be much more transparent, and forward-facing with this, that we're not, that we're involving all the stakeholders that need to be involved, or not even need to be, but ideally. Does that, I don't know, am I wording that right?
So you have that reality that probably is, impacts the timeline, and then you have the reality that the people that you need the chunk of the information from are also doing their
Oh, absolutely.
full-time jobs in
Yeah.
a dynamic and demanding school system. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
And as long as we're being clear, like you said, Anne Marie, I think that's good.
And I think that to Dr. Taylor's point, about it taking longer, I think that's just obviously putting it out there to the reality that we have had the request for other people besides, those of us closest to it in the schools to be involved in this.
That's
So
wonderful,
just
yeah.
for complete clarity and expectation, tempering, it will add time.
Yeah.
On that point, so remember this was on the warrant article for November, and then we, at the last minute, asked FinCom to approve an increase from 60,000 to 100,000, which they did, and then town meeting overwhelmingly supported this. But when Anne Marie and I went to FinCom right before town meeting, she and I did agree that the individual FinCom members, not them at a meeting, like talking about it, but the individual Finance Commission members would have a chance to offer their feedback on the RFP. So just a reminder that we do have to get this into that process. So Dr. Taylor, I know you're planning to have the first draft like the week of the 26th of February after break. And then as a working group, we're going to talk about it and work on it. But at that point, I think probably get it to the FinCom members.
Yeah, I imagine that after we do our own internal first round of revisions.
Yeah, so like the
And we feel
fourth.
comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Then because we also talked about sharing it not only with FinCom, but with our broader administrative
Yes,
team. We
yes.
talked about sharing with a couple of groups as well.
Yep.
So I think that's sort of I think we open it up for public comment in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Would
So
that
that
be like
various
early
groups
March?
have a time simultaneously to review and give feedback.
I think that's a good plan. And then
Mhm.
also, if it's gonna go to the town to be published on the 8th, it should probably be, discussed on the 7th here. So if that could go on the long-term agenda for March 7th.
LTA. Yep.
And Dr. Taylor, as we're working on this more as a working group, there is a whole timeline that goes in it, so the vendor knows what we're looking for in terms of the turnaround, right? We just
And
haven't
we'll have
gotten
to
that
work
far.
with, right, and we'll have to work with the town, and the procurement officer that's why it stops at release.
Yeah.
And doesn't give any more detail around the vendor selection process.
Yep.
Because that really has to be led by the town, so we need to collaborate with them on
Right,
that.
right. And since we're doing a bid process this time and not a quote, the
Mhm.
working group will collaborate on the rubric, correct?
Mhm.
And the working group is many of us in this room.
Mhm.
Ms. Nito,
Right.
Ms. Bourgeois, Mr. Wells,
Mhm.
Dr. Taylor, I'm on it.
Yep.
Cindy Durain, Scarlett
Mhm.
Grant, Dr. Grant,
Yep. Erin Regan.
Erin Regan, there's a parent rep from the CPAC.
Mhm.
And then Kate Davey, and then Sarah Sullivan is our FinCom liaison, and she's
Right.
been in it as well, and Jill Driscoll.
And Children's School, right, and also, not only are we, right, so there are a lot of cooks in this kitchen.
Yeah. Representation is happening, people. Representation
Right,
is happening.
Right, which is why the process is will take a little time, right? We want to do this right. And I just want to point out, not only will the group have to create the rubric, but this will be the group that will read the applications as
And
well.
then choose. going
And
forward.
choose.
Yeah,
Right.
so it is a little bit of a different process than we've taken before.
Mhm.
And, we said we wanted it to be comprehensive student services, so all the
this
pieces
is
of
what
student
comprehensive
services.
means.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that just to reiterate that, our original dates that we gave, this is a good reason to miss those dates and to extend and to expand that timeline, because, as we know, we don't want to do something, we don't want to pay a lot of money to do something half-assed. So, really, we want this to be worth every penny that town meeting approved for us. So, getting it right is imperative. So I definitely agree with, if we need to strength and, stretch things out
Totally.
to get it done correctly, it's definitely appropriate. Any other questions on this?
Just thank you to Dr.
Yes.
Taylor. She runs a very efficient meeting.
Efficient meeting.
There's an agenda, there's a template, there are bullet points, there are assignments. My type A self really likes it.
Clear is kind, I just try to be
I'm telling
clear.
What is that, clear as kind?
Clear is kind, I just try to be clear.
I like that.
No, I don't think we do, I don't think we need to vote. I put that there as a question mark just in case. I didn't want it to not be there, and then we had to vote on it, and someone said it wasn't listed as a vote. But I do not think we need to vote on that for the timeline. All right, we're gonna move on to our next item on the agenda. We're getting awfully close to the last one. Is the superintendent evaluation process, a process check-in. Dr. Thompson?
Yes, and I did send the committee a memo today. Unfortunately, I am not engaged in the process at all. I had expected that I would have at least pulled up the previous document and gone through and added things. I have not had the time to do that. As you know, deeply involved with the elementary study. Just trying, well, the good news is that we've succeeded in finding a director for our CFCE, which is our Community Family Comprehensive Family Engagement, and she is going to start on Monday, but a lot of extra time on EEC, a lot of extra time in budget, but the short answer is that with all the work in the district and all the work that the school committee has onboarding a new superintendent, I would recommend that we pause the process or hold it in abeyance into this point and concentrate on the transition and the work that we have to do. So that's where I am at this point. I don't know if you want to discuss it or what have you, but I don't, that 31st, was it the 31st date? There's no way in hell I'm going to have anything for you on the 31st. So that's just a reality of the amount of work that is for all of us at this point. So that's where I'm at.
Yes.
Given the transition and to Dr. Thompson's point, the work of the district, I think it makes sense to concentrate and prioritize on more immediate needs. So I would move to approve the memo and change the process that we originally committed to under normal circumstances for the superintendent evaluation. And I don't know what the language is, but to, did you say abeyance, is that a word? To move forward in that manner.
Yeah, we definitely would need to vote on it since it's a change to what we voted on originally.
Is there anything that legally we would have to do?
Is there like
Second.
Just make sure we have a score at the end. That's all the TESE cares about. But,
Okay.
yep.
Wait,
What, when we not do it?
hang on a second. That we have a score at the end?
Yeah, pass it forward, yeah, like you did in
I
the between.
can't, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Pass the rating forward, yep.
So, I was gonna ask about the word abeyance, and now you're saying there
This
will
was
need to be a
good to
score.
know.
Well, we can
It
go back and
defaults,
check on that
I
with
can
council.
say, okay, so.
Yeah.
Abeyance
Check in
means you
legal.
suspend
You
temporarily.
know, I know, but the way the state works is like, if we've let people go in my role at another high school, or if someone leaves or retires, what the state does is it just, as long as you're like professional status, it's the year before, it just automatically
Oh, yeah.
populates. And that's what gets reported to the state, because for whatever reason, the state feels it appropriate to.
Okay, so not a new rating, but a default to the old
Correct,
rating.
we could,
Right.
or we
Okay.
could put something in there where just like the default is whatever the previous year was.
Just a quick point of order, there's a motion, but there's not a second.
Yeah, right,
So
right,
there
yeah.
should be a
Sorry.
second if we're
Correct.
gonna continue
Yes,
discussion.
I was getting this.
Second.
Well,
I second.
I know,
Okay.
everyone started piling up.
Yeah.
Don't make
We're-
me use this.
We're clear, comfortable?
I'm not clear with abeyance.
I'm sorry,
Abeyance
who
means-
seconded?
I seconded it.
Thank you.
So that I could keep talking. Um,
Thank you.
So abeyance means we're suspending it for a temporary amount of time. That means we eventually have to do it. That doesn't seem like what
Yeah, that's not what I thought.
what we're asking, like, that doesn't seem in the spirit of the memo. So it would be that we suspend the evaluation process? Does that work, to say that instead?
I mean, we could suspend it and then retake it up later in the school year,
So
whether to complete it. Does that make sense?
Abeyance does have the word disuse in it, which is to discontinue the
Are we
use
really
or
gonna
practice
have-
of.
Dueling
Okay, that's what I
dictionary.
thought. I thought we were saying, given
Just
the
trying to be clear.
transition.
A state of temporary disuse. It's the temporary that's the problem.
I thought it was,
So then what if we said temporarily and we just rolled the previous evaluation forward?
I'm more comfortable saying that we're suspending it. Because,
Pending.
Is
So is that your?
because
What
that's
do
the
you mean?
intent.
Pending checking with, we'd have to repeat the motion. never mind.
Well, that would just be you would need a.
I'd make a friendly amendment.
To the
Okay.
motion.
Don't do that.
So, so I guess what I'm recommending for those of you who are at home who can't see the memo says, I'm asking that the committee take no further action on my evaluation now, period. Rather holding the evaluation process in abeyance, I'd just like to strike that last sentence. Because it has contradictory intents, and our intent is to focus on the transition of the district, which I have no problem with, but I just don't want to have somebody come around later on and say, like,
Right,
I don't want to have,
let's talk about it
be
again.
like, hang on a
Yeah,
second, technically you were
exactly.
supposed to have done this, and then, it's 3 years down the road, and, yeah, so.
I don't think, yeah.
Kate, do you take that friendly amendment to your?
I do. I don't
Your
think it's in the
motion?
best interests for us to revisit it and spend time on it.
I forget how to do friendly amendments. Do we need a second to the friendly amendment?
I think Kate just needs to accept the
Accept
friendly
You just
amendment.
accept it, okay.
Just accept it.
Like Robert's rules is going out the
Kate just
window on
accepts
that.
the friendly
Okay, so we had, so the motion is to accept the recommendation in the memo, accept striking in abeyance, to just suspend. And so now I need a second for that amended,
Second.
seconded by David. Okay, any other discussion on this? Yes, Teresa?
A couple thoughts. Again, just being like a process person. David, I hear what you are saying has been done in other districts, and I'm not refuting that. I just am aware of what's been done here over the last 7 years, and I do not believe in Norwood we have had teachers or principals resign, retire, move on, and not have an evaluation done. And I know for certain the last superintendent, even though he was retiring, we still wrote his evaluation. So I just want to put that process of in Norwood out there. Dr. Thompson, thank you for your memo, and thank you for expressing, wanting to work with us on a transition plan, because I do agree that is very, very important. And looking forward, that is going to take up your time and our time and other administrators' time. So that is something we should probably talk about soon, long-term agenda. But obviously we need to do that. I'm not comfortable not doing an evaluation because it's one of the 3 main responsibilities that I've been elected to do, and that just for me personally is not something I'm okay with. But if the majority of the school committee votes in that manner, of course I will support the decision of the majority of the school committee. But I do have some questions about what that then means just in practice and as an evaluatory tool of the district, because we've been working really hard to align superintendent goals, school committee goals, school improvement plan, strategic plan, teacher goals, principal goals. We worked very hard to align all of that. And it's a 2-year cycle that we're supposed to evaluate, and a lot of really amazing work has been done, Dr. Thompson, by you and your team in those last 2 years that should not be overlooked. But also, as a school committee member, out of all those areas, there's 2 areas that I get to put direct feedback and time assessing to provide direction for the future. And the one is the self-evaluation tool that we do as a school committee, and we have done many times in the past couple years, and we'll need to do again over the summer. And then the other is the superintendent evaluation. And it's so tied to the strategic plan And I just am struggling with the idea of not doing the evaluation and a possible message that that sends to the rest of the district about the work. So if we do not do the evaluation, you have goals that are currently only through January. Is the expectation that those goal areas continue? And is the expectation that the things that we had called out around like quarterly reports for certain aspects, will that continue to happen in your tenure?
Yes.
Yes?
I mean-
Whether I finish all of them in January, or whether I finish them in May.
Well, I said the rest of your tenure.
Right. But as I said back in September, that I was not putting my feet up and eating bonbons, so. But at this point where we are now, there's nothing left to go, so.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll put that to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? So that passes 4-1. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item is the one we're going to temporarily skip over. This may work out really well, depending on what the discussion looks like for our next items on the agenda, which would be policy. So we have policy subcommittee update. Kate will give you our policy subcommittee update.
Yes, so we met on Tuesday briefly, and we're able to loop back about JLCA, which has been hanging over our heads for a while through the holidays and all the things that are going on. But there was a question on the table about aligning. First of all, let me step back. Jill, our nurse, edited the policy to reflect what our current practice is. And there was a question about how that differentiates from what's recommended by MASC and then one of the MGL laws. That's redundant, MGLs. What we feel like and want to recommend at this point is to, and also John Longley chimed in and did not have a substantive change to the language. He just sort of told us what the practice was, which was in line with what Jill was saying. So our recommendation at this point is to accept those changes, but then to consult with counsel, Melissa, to make sure to the question about the MGL, the general law, that we would be covered with the service we do provide. So I know we haven't accepted these track changes yet, and I don't know if people want to see a clean copy of it while we're consulting with Melissa.
Yeah, I'm a little confused with it. There's a lot going on
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
document. It's not clear to me like what is substitution language and what is completely going out.
Okay.
Since it's going to be sent to Melissa, I didn't go through it, but we can go through and accept the track changes and get you guys a clean version so that because we'll need to talk about this again. We're not asking for a vote tonight, obviously, because we want to check with council.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have this discussion because that way we can get some of the discussion in place before we hopefully vote on it at the next meeting, if we can have Melissa's review before then. But essentially, there is a lot of language stricken. To one of the comments was, MASC's policy is pretty, comprehensive, lengthy policy, and we've kind of narrowed it down to like 2 paragraphs. And as we know, we don't have to follow the MASC's, policies word for word. They're best practice, but in this case, a lot of their language does not pertain at all to what we're doing in our district. Now, to the point about it referencing the MGL, we do want to check with council and make sure that what we are doing covers us as far as what the law says. We believe so, because I think that, our, Ms. Driscoll and the administrative staff know what the law is and know what we are supposed to be providing, so I do believe that we are, but as far as like wording the policy, we want to make sure that the language covers us from that perspective. We just feel like we don't need MASC's very detailed policy, especially for pulling out quite a lot of the language around, having an internal physician doing, exams and things like that. There were some language changes that were kind of just switch things around that Ms. Driscoll thought were more appropriate to the way we do things here. So that, there are some wording changes. Most of them actually, like I said, just kind of reword what was already there, and it pretty much says the same thing. But again, we are going to send it to Melissa just to verify that we're not saying in our policy something completely contradictory to the MGLs. Does that make sense?
So then are you looking for
I was just looking for,
A vote to approve, like, clean up the language and send it to Melissa before we.
no,
No.
unless you have something that you read in it and you're like, no.
No.
Well, we're recommending we take we're updating you and recommending
Yeah.
we take the recommendations of Jill.
Yes,
and then
we
we're
feel like
checking
the
on
way
that
it's
other
written
question.
does capture the way we do it in the district appropriately. And we just want to, again, just double check with council that it doesn't go against any of the MGLs, that we are actually covered from the policy.
Okay.
But we're not looking for a vote today just because we know it's not the cleaned up. And
Great.
we do want Melissa's verification before we
But
ask for
you'll
your vote.
Clean it up and send it to Melissa. and then
Yeah,
come back to
and
us.
then if, when we send you guys out the cleaned, like the track change accepted versions, we'll have the 2 versions.
Great.
Definitely give us any more feedback, and we can pass that on as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to leave you guys hanging, that we are talking about this, we are actively talking about it.
So the
Can I-
next, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Joe?
No, can I, or are you asking for feedback?
Yeah?
So just in general with policies, the more specific we go, it may be what we do in practice, but that means every time practice changes, we have to change policy.
Yep.
Just the first sentence of the second paragraph, I don't think we need to get that specific. During the school day as mandated by general law and Department of Public Health regulations. That way we're covered by public health regulations versus spelling out each and everything that we do. But
Yeah.
again, that's
Because
just a
some of
general
them were-
recommendation.
Yeah, in the MASC policy, there were some that were already there, like the site,
Right, so,
and other physical problems, and so they were just kind of, and so, yeah, she was listing out the things that we do.
yeah, and
but-
so I'm just saying, all of that is mandated by Department of Health, right?
Yep.
So why don't we just say as mandated by the Department of Public Health? Just, again, in case something
Yeah, just
changes.
something a little more broad
Yeah.
that covers, yeah, that makes sense.
And again, there, as as the committees continue to work on these policies, we've kind of tried to make a commitment to distinguishing between policies, which are broader and higher level, and procedures and practices.
Yes.
Which can be updated without a vote, but can be updated by central office and Jill. So if Jill wants to send home a flyer that says, per policy, this is what we do, and these are the things that we do, she can do that because she can change that as needed without, going through school committee and going through a whole bunch of different protocols.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else right now that is glaring that we should look at?
So we're meeting on the 6th, and Joe Kidd is gonna join us, and we're gonna talk about some recent new MASC recommended policies around tech and look at how we need to prioritize that in terms of, what the implications are. So that's
Great.
next on the list.
All right, so that is it for policy, unless anyone has any other questions or general policy questions. Okay, so, that is, I don't think we had any, donations this week, no consent agenda.
Nope.
Well, look at that. So, given that it is really close to 9, where we are supposed to be getting, Mr. Hardy here at about 9 o'clock, I would suggest we take a short recess, and then we will come back in about 9 o'clock. Hopefully he is here. Do I need it, can I have a
Move to recess until Jim Hardy arrives.
moved by David, seconded by Teresa, all those in favor?
I'm gonna make a friendly amendment.
Oh, yes.
What happens if he doesn't show up till 9:30?
Yeah,
Let's
I'll check in. Let's break the,
Thanks.
Okay, let's give us a time. We need an actual time, because we can come back in a session. We can adjourn to
9:10.
executive session to at
Yeah,
least
9.
get some work done.
9:10.
So 9 o'clock?
9:10.
9:10. 9:10?
Great.
Okay, we will recess until 9, for 15 minutes until 9:10.
or
at which
earlier
ti-
if he's here.
Or earlier.
He's here.
He's
At
gonna
which-
walk in as soon as we break.
Okay.
That's the motion there.
The motion is to take a break
Move to
until.
recess until 9:10.
Until 9:10, unless we come back a little early. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure.
5-0. Thank you.
That was good.
Welcome back to the school committee meeting of Wednesday, January 24th. We're coming back from our recess. We are ready to go to our final topic on our agenda. We have Mr. Jim Hardy here this evening to speak with us and give us an update on our superintendent search, and where we will announce our finalists from the search committee and dissolve our search committee. So welcome. Yes, please. The microphone for the TV is here.
Good evening.
Welcome, Mr. Hardy.
Before I begin, I'd just like to make a comment. The search committee that you appointed, the feedback I received from every candidate that they spoke with was a very positive experience. They appreciated the interest that the search committee, in listening to the candidates, they were engaged, making eye contact, and every candidate felt that they represented Norwood in a very positive light. So I know that at some point you'll thank them, but I just wanted to put that out there too, that from my perspective, they were very, I wouldn't say an easy group to work with, because David was on it. But they respected everybody's opinion, each other's opinion. They listened. They work well together. So, from that perspective, you had a great group that that went through this part of the process for you, and have now entrusted you with the rest of it. So, in your packets, on the right-hand side, the first document is actually a memo from the search committee to you, and I'll just read it into the record. 25 candidates submitted packages for the position of superintendent of schools in Norwood. The Norwood Superintendent Search Committee reviewed all the application, and after a series of preliminary interviews and discussion, voted to submit the following candidates to the school committee for consideration as the next superintendent. That was a unanimous vote, by the way. And listed in alphabetical order is Dr. John J. Bucky, formerly the superintendent in Marblehead Public Schools, and there's a brief narrative of Dr. Bucky. Timothy Luff, who's currently the deputy superintendent of schools in Natick, and there's a brief bio for him. And Priya Tahilani, who is currently under contract as a superintendent of schools in Everett. All three candidates were unanimously selected by the search committee to move forward to you. I have contacted all three candidates. They are very much looking forward to this process, and as such, have come up with a schedule for the steps going forward. Each candidate's going to visit Norwood next Thursday, I should say, a week from tomorrow, February 1st. They will meet here at the Savage Center at 10:30, and then there'll be a sequence of 3 schools that they'll visit between 11 and 2 o'clock. One will go to one will go to the other, one will go to the other, and then they will rotate throughout the day. So for that period of time, there'll be 3 candidates visiting 3 different schools. And then at 2 o'clock, the names of the schools are, I know it's Coakley, Prescott, and Belch. Right, those are the 3 schools. And the original timeline we had to tweak because of the early dismissal of the elementary schools. So initially, we were doing it kind of in the afternoon, but it makes no sense to visit a school that has no students in it. So I did contact the candidates, and they were very much agreeable to the change to earlier. Then there'll be a break. Candidates could probably go somewhere in Norwood, get something to eat. And then at 4 o'clock, all candidates will report to the high school. And we have, the high school principal has graciously set up 3 different meeting spaces within the high school. And one meeting space will have students, one meeting space will have parents and residents, and another meeting space will have employees. And each candidate will rotate around. They'll spend 25 minutes in each session, 5 minutes in between sessions, and they'll the people will stay in the same place, the candidates will rotate through to them. So all 3 groups will see all 3 candidates over the span of 2 hours or so. We have set up an online survey for the people who participate in the site visits, and participate in the group settings to be able to provide you feedback of what their thoughts are. I printed up a whole 200 of these things. Right? It's a QR code that all the people have to do is hit it with their picture, hit it with their camera on their phone, and it will take them to the survey. We asked them to identify all 3 candidates' names are listed as question 1. We asked them to pick, so basically they have to do this 3 times if they see all 3 candidates, because we want to be able to separate the feedback by candidate. The second question asked them to identify, are they an employee, are they a student, are they parent, resident, or are they administrators? And then we can, break out the data accordingly. The idea being that this is done by 3 o'clock, we close it at 3 o'clock on Monday, so that we can get you the information in time for you to review it prior to your decision on the 7th, because your interviews are going to be before the 3rd, right? And that schedule is on this memo. And I put 3 pieces of paper in a hat, I drew names out, and that's the order of the interviews. There was no rhyme or reason, it was just luck of the draw, that's how they came out. So the first interview scheduled for Saturday, February 3rd, 10:30 with Priya Tahliani. Then 11:40 to 12:40 Timothy Luff, and 12:50 to 1:50 John Bucky. With an hour for each one, with a little break in between so you can use the restroom, get a coffee or something to that effect. And then we did pick a snow day just in case, because it's much easier to schedule it now than on February 3rd. So February 6th is set aside as a snow day, given that that's a Tuesday. Those times will start at 6 o'clock, same order, but it will be starting at 6 p.m. and going. And then February 7th, you're scheduled to make a vote or make a decision as to who to offer the position to, pending successful contract negotiations. So there's 200 of these QR codes all cut up, and another 200 that are photo a page. So if we needed more, we can cut them up real fast. But I just wanted to make sure I just showed you that they were here. I do have extra copies of the cover page that I provided to you, so I'll leave those if you want to give them to somebody, or somebody makes a public records request of that. You can feel free to do that. Inside your packets are copies of each application, the complete application packet for each of the 3 candidates. That application packet consists of the 4-page application, their candidate's resume or curriculum vitae, whatever you want to call it, evidence of the highest degree that they've earned, a copy of their license as a superintendent of schools in Massachusetts, 3 letters of reference, and a personal statement stating why they think they're a good fit for Norwood. That information was what the search committee preliminary had. That was their first take a look at the candidates. They made a determination of who to invite in from interviews from that, and then based on both the data point of the interview and the data point of the application, that's how they came up with the 3 names coming to you. I do have copies for you or for your, whoever the public records, if you do get requests, because the only part of that document that's public is the resume. All the rest of it is not public record. But I do have copies, 10 copies of each candidate's resume, that if you do get a public records request, you can just send these out. I can send these to you electronically if you need to. but I think you can just scan it and email it off if you have to. The difference is that these don't have all their resumes have their home phone numbers on them, so we took that
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
Clearly
There's
redacted.
no reason for that. So that's part of this as well. There's also one clean copy of each applicant, so if you do need to make additional copies for yourself, they're here, but these would be the, official, records for your minutes, so to speak. Even though there's a copy in that folder, but this would be like the official copy of the application packets. The resumes, apps, QR codes, and these are just the memos, so. Like I said, all the applicants are raring to go. They're ready for their visits. They're looking forward to it. I think the people who will meet them will be impressed, just based off the feedback from the search committee. And the beauty, part of the beauty of that search committee is you now have 13 more people who were part of the process and also support all 3 candidates that are going forward. So that's a plus as well. My understanding is that the members of the central office will be escorting the candidates around on their visit day. Is that correct? Right. So that's one more data point that you can collect from. That's why we put administrators as part of that survey. So again, you can separate it out based off of each group. I think initially, the initial thing you'd look at is the summary of all the data for each candidate, and then we can break it out into further data. But that's what I'm gonna send you first, is the summary of everybody's input for each, so you're gonna get 3 files, so to speak, one for each candidate. And then, once you've had a chance to look at that, I'll send the breakout from each candidate, because that's gonna be 4 groups, 3 candidates, gonna be 12 files. They're in PDF, but.
And you said that comes out on the 5th, so we can get it like late on the 5th or
Yeah.
on the 6th?
Yeah, well, we're gonna close the survey at, say, 3 o'clock
Okay.
on Monday.
Okay.
And then, that night, I'll be, I mean, it's not rocket science, if you've ever used SurveyMonkey, it's
Yeah.
pretty simple to break out the data. The biggest part of it is waiting for it to populate,
Yeah.
and then download it and send it out.
Okay.
But I'll probably send the breakout, I'll do them candidate by candidate, so, and I'll just do it in order of the interviews. That you'll get the breakout of, like in one email, be all the breakout information for John Bucky, all the breakout information for Priya, all the breakout information for Timothy. So you've got three emails, but the first email will be the summary of all 3. And that will be the first email you get from me.
Okay.
So with that information and our notes from the interviews, we'll take that into the 7th for our deliberation. And generally, Jim, I think the way that goes is the chair conducts those deliberations. We go through the candidates and talk about their strengths and we go through each one.
Yeah, the one thing we ask is because your deliberation is gonna be public about the 3 candidates, you focus on why you think they're a good fit and leave it at that. Is, the last thing we want is to, these candidates kind of put their neck out and put it out there publicly, applying to your district, so there's no reason that we should have them leave with a bad taste in their mouth about the district.
So you'll have all that data, including your own notes, and just to emphasize, you're welcome to, any of us are welcome to go to those meet and greets. Jim suggests, if you do, to stay in the same room so that they rotate through. And you see them all, but, whether you want to be with staff,
Yeah, if you
students,
move
or.
group to group, you're not gonna see all 3 of them. If you stay in the same place, then you'll see all 3 of them.
Just real quick, one more logistical thing. So for questions, my understanding is that we are going to, did you want to?
Nope.
Why don't you say what?
Something I have to do.
Oh, okay. So you have a packet of,
On the left-hand side of the folder, the first document is the list of questions that the search committee asked. So you can see what questions these candidates have already responded to. The second document is an expanded version of the question guide we provided to the search committee. The first part of that question guide is where most of those questions came from. And they're designed specifically for search committees. But later in the packet, and if you look at the index, you'll see it, are more in-depth type of questions that are typically asked at school committee level. Basic premise was in our interview, I think Dave and Kate had talked about the three members who haven't met the candidates. You could ask 2 questions, and then Dave and Kate would ask 1 or 2 or whatever. But you're looking at about 10 questions is appropriate in an hour interview. Particularly since the questions are gonna be looking for much more in-depth responses than what the search committee did 15 questions in an hour. And for the most part, we were able to get all the interviews done in that hour time frame.
An average of an hour.
Yeah, right. So it's pretty close. But I think that the questions the school committee asked typically are much more detailed responses and much more in-depth responses. So that's why we kind of bring it back a little bit.
So to piggyback off and talk a little bit about the question process. So what we did in the committee was we went through, we selected a couple, we sort of narrowed down and got our list. So you guys have 1, what we had asked. 2, you also have a list of questions to ask. You can determine, I have a question that didn't make the cut the first time that I would like to ask. So I would support you guys ask 2, those that were not a part of the screening. And then, Kate, if you want to ask 2, go ahead. Also remember, I think Kate gave you a great resource in one of the emails. The first thing, I know that asks, who are you, why'd you go into education, next, why is Norwood? Generally you leave room for an opening statement and a closing statement as well. I think when you ask the questions, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jim, is at this point, these 3 candidates know that they're gonna have to expand. We didn't do follow-ups, and also when you look at those questions, sometimes there are like sneaky hidden 2 questions in one.
Yeah.
You can make it detailed, but make sure that you keep it to 1, because, the idea is we want them in the public setting to be able to show off and tell us why they have the experience, they have the ideas, why they're great there. So if, and when we settle on the number of questions that we choose, with the opening and closing, so really we'd only need 8, that you guys could take the next week to go through, think about, and we could sort of do a process similar to that of the screening committee, where we sort of screen out those questions and have that document put together a day or 2 before. So where
We check for redundancies.
Yep.
And make
ready
sure
to
we're
go,
covering
tweak.
all of the, sort of main priorities that we want to hit.
Yes.
If I could, just,
Yes.
Kate and David did provide to the search committee the key priorities that the school committee had established.
Yep.
So that was kind of like the guiding focus for the question development, is to making sure they touched upon those key responsibilities that you identified.
Along with the data we got from
The
those
survey.
focus groups in the survey. There was overlap, obviously, but those were the things that we used to, I think, make our selections for sure, and inform our questions.
To triangulate with data.
Triangulate.
So.
So, January 31st, we're gonna ask you guys to have submitted questions to Jim.
To Jim.
To Jim, yeah,
And the
then,
process goes through you because of open meeting law.
Correct. It's not that we're circumventing it, it's just that you can't deliberate.
Correct.
I just want the public to understand
Yeah.
and
So,
yeah,
there's one more thing I want to say, but do you have questions on
I haven't
specifically
something to-
around the question stuff and what the next week looks like in your homework for the next week?
No, I just want to say these questions that you put together as a search committee are phenomenal, so, I
And-
kind of want to know what everyone said to your questions in the
Well,
search committee.
and I should say, I don't think this is deliberation, because I think I'm stating the obvious, but the question should be around our priorities, right? Our strategic priorities, our challenges, what, you know, what we're facing right now. And some of that might overlap. We might have a question that is similar to one on the initial round, but to Jim's point, it should be one that brings out a detailed answer. You know, for instance, budget, we're gonna have another budget question, right?
Another one?
Yeah,
Another
we're gonna have
one?
people talk about the budget.
You're gonna ask it, David.
Budget question.
No, I
Just
already, I
budget
already have my
questions.
question selected, so I'm very
Um,
excited.
So, can I ask that question? So, yeah, so if we're set, just because, I don't know if this is just not making sense in my brain. If we're gonna send our questions to Jim, we will not know if another person has picked our question, correct?
So I would suggest, excellent question. I would suggest you three pick, if we're gonna pick two, pick four.
Okay.
Because that way if there are any.
That's exactly where I was
And
going.
put it in priority.
Yeah.
Prioritize,
So the
exactly.
question that's most important to you, make that first, and then.
Okay.
and that way, if we have, you know, budget, you say, well, okay, I'm gonna look at the 3 budget questions, and which one do I think will get the most information? And then I'm gonna go
that's
to
good.
second question, and then if your second
Jones-
question's the same
Jones
as,
is budget hog.
Dr. Giblins, then I'd go to your third and
Okay.
see how that works.
And,
But then it would be sent back to you
okay,
for your review, but you comment back
respond to
me.
you. Understood.
Yep.
Okay.
And if there's a glaring omission area,
They can-
might point that out to you and say,
They can cover it
there's no
in-
question on,
They can cover it in the opening statement or the closing statement.
I,
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
see, this is what I put out there.
We know.
If there's no questions, and maybe there will be more questions, but I just have a couple of
He
housekeeping
did
things.
keep it fun.
I was like, he's in the room, guys, cut it out.
I just want it noted in the record that Jody Smith is laughing at that.
I want to thank you, Jim, for your guidance and holding our hands through this process. I want to also, I agree that the search committee was excellent. Their input was invaluable, and I really appreciated everything that everyone brought to the table. I just want to do, David and I both wanted to thank them. And we'll just say who they are. Hugh Galligan, Molly Holm, Jeff Kerr, Karen Milch, Brian Riley, Jody Smith, they represented our staff. Becky Flynn, Jocelyn Lumley, Casey Russo, Mike Sangalang, and Jamie Singalis represented our parents. Maya Bodenhofer and Pat Riley represented the town in other ways. And again, thank you to the time. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of sort of investment behind the scenes and then in meetings. So we do appreciate that. Other housekeeping is that we'll have Joe Kidd post this information, the resumes, which are public, will go up on the website along with the information about the school visits, the meet and greets, so that the public has access to that. I think that's it for housekeeping, because we've talked about a lot of the other
Okay,
things.
before you go.
Yeah.
I just want to say the same thing and echo what Kate had said, and I really want to thank Kate. She did excellent. Jim, thank you. I really enjoyed the process, although I can be a pain. And also, we had a...
You weren't that bad.
Not at all.
We had a really, really strong candidate pool, and there was really good conversation with that group. So again, thank you to the whole search committee, to everyone that applied, and I think we've put forward 3 very qualified candidates. And it's going to leave us with a difficult decision in a good way. So
I agree.
So because we're talking about housekeeping and because this memorandum is going to go public, I do have to tell you there is a critical, immensely critical error on this memorandum.
Oh, come on, Joe.
Mr. Buckley's doctorate is listed as being from the Lesser University of Harvard. And he actually got his doctorate, according to his resume, from Northeastern, which, as Dr. Thompson and I know, is the superior doctoral program. I am sorry, Dr. Taylor, but that is a critical error. Poor Jim just walked into an ongoing in-joke, And I apologize for that, but I couldn't pass that up. So I actually don't know.
Can you tell where Joan got her PhD?
No, actually, that's not where I got my
I thought you
PhD.
did.
No, that's just where I work.
No, that's just where you work.
But
There you go. You can't. What?
it used to be Old Dominion.
Yeah.
It used to be
It's
Dr.
backwards.
Wyeth and Dr. Taylor were from Harvard, and Dr. Thompson and I represented Northeastern. So I actually, and I'll just say for the record, I don't know Mr. Buckley. I don't know
I did it
Mr. Bucky.
backwards. His master's.
It's a transcription. It's a clerical error.
I don't know you at all. I
But
totally
you,
thought it
that
was
you are, yeah, you walked into an ongoing in joke, and I apologize for that. I had to
all
point it out.
Do you know what the headline in the record?
I will.
I know, but you know, I gotta have pride in my program.
I will fix this and send it in.
Okay, thank you. So, Jim's gonna fix that and send the new one where it's flopped back the right way.
How long were you sitting on? waiting
Oh, the
to
whole
come
time.
in?
The whole time, as soon as I saw it.
Oh, right.
Sorry.
I think that's it for, oh, sorry.
Jim, are you with us at the interviews, or like, do we see you
That's the
again in the
plan.
process? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I would ask is like, if the room across the hall can be unlocked so that if one person is, it's public now, so I
Yep.
really don't care that they see each other. When it was the semifinalist ones, we kind of had all the way down into the benches in front of the transportation office. We'd store one down there and then bring one out and bring another one in. But just for a place to sit, because I don't want them in the room with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
And the beauty of having them all in one day is it limits the ability for one candidate to kind of watch an interview versus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes it fair.
And I will be reaching out to our.
It'd be great if they could time delay the.
Yes, friends at
broadcasting.
NCM about
Mhm.
how we'll cover that, because they, of course, will cover it, and that will be one of
Yeah.
the opportunities for the community to watch them.
Right.
But there's good reason to have a time delay so that there's not an unfair
Right.
advantage, just so that people understand that if it's,
And since the vote's on a different day, it
Right.
doesn't really affect it.
right.
Whereas if you were voting right after the interviews, that'd be, no, you can't do the delay because the people would want to see the vote live.
Right, but it's still, right.
Right.
Yep.
One question around the reference checks. Can you guide us through how we do that?
There's two types of references in the application packet. One is personal references, which are on the 4-page application form, and then there are letters of reference. The professional letters of reference have already been somewhat vetted, in that the information that's within them is accurate. And the personal references I can't do, because I'm not the employer. So that would be, I think we had talked about at the subcommittee level, that with 3 candidates, if each one of the other members took one and called the references, that would then kind of give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about one of the candidates that Dave and Kate have a somewhat of an advantage on, having participated in the previous process. There's in the question guide, there are questions in there about doing reference checks. I just suggest that the last question you ask anybody is there anybody else that you know that also knows the candidate's name that I can talk to, and what's their phone number? Only so, it kind of goes back to a previous career where I was a CID officer in the Army, and part of my responsibility was doing background checks for top secret clearances. And we would do a 3rd-generation reference check process, and meaning, I can tell you what the people who are on the application are gonna tell you. And I think you would know what they're gonna tell you too. But if you get into the 2nd generation, you ask those people, the 2nd-generation people, is there anybody else that you know? And you get into the 3rd generation, and the history, the story's the same, you can feel pretty comfortable about that. If it starts shifting, little follow-up information is required.
So we will not do that.
Sorry to cut you off. That's an excellent question,
Yeah.
and Kate and I wanted to offer to you 3 first. Like, is that doable for you guys?
Well, just.
Do the three of you
again,
want
just
to?
the Meeting process, exactly. So we call, obviously we just got all this, so I haven't had a
Right,
chance to look through
right.
it. Is there a form we fill out? Do we share the form with each other?
No, it's just, it's your notes. There's not necessarily a form, because a lot of it's gonna depend on what they say.
Right.
The letters have already written, they've already stated it, but the
Yeah.
people that are in the application form, there's no, communication from them at this point.
Right. But like, how do we share with each other what we learned from
You
our
just,
first
you
trip?
write it up, and
Uh-huh.
then as part of that deliberation meeting on the seventh,
Everybody would have
you
access
make
to
copies
that.
of it and you distribute it to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
But you three are okay, like, you can fight amongst yourselves of who you would like to call? And do or no?
So we would want this done by the 7th, right?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I'm
Just
fine.
making sure.
No, no, of course. Yeah, we can
I'm
decide.
fine with that, it's by the 7th.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we can decide, I
If
don't
it
think
was
we
like
need
by
to.
Friday, then no, but the 7th.
I mean, I might fight with you. Sorry, I'm tired.
Just to put a fine point on it, the notes would be provided to us just at deliberation or ahead of deliberation?
Whenever you've completed
Okay.
all your references, you can draft it up and share it with your colleagues.
Great.
If you
We
give
can
it to
start
them
a
at the
folder.
meeting, then that,
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a chance.
There's a folder already.
So just add to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
so maybe say the sixth, have it done by the sixth, written up, and then you can, well, the fifth, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
the
sooner
fifth.
the better.
That's another week, that's another week,
Yeah.
so.
So
we
the
can add.
31st, you want us to get to you our questions.
How
And
many?
then 4.
Good.
I am not the person to question about details, David.
Just making sure.
4 questions, but I only get to ask 2, and Jim Hardy's gonna decide which ones I get to ask.
Not
got it.
necessarily.
We get, it's an iterative process
Yeah.
with Jim.
Okay, so the 31st, questions to Jim, and then the first is the candidates that we can go to the forums if we'd like at 4.
Yep.
And then by the 5th, we wanna get our reference checks done, right? And then we're interviewing on
Third.
the 3rd.
Yep.
And
Decision
deliberating on the
7th.
7th. And all of this is going on the website so the community follows our
Yes,
timeline.
yes.
Correct.
So, third interviews,
Mhm.
snow date sixth,
Yes,
hopefully we don't need it.
yes.
Seventh, deliberations, snow date 14th. Right?
Yes.
If there's a snow date on the 7th, God help us.
Well, we can meet
We haven't-
remotely though,
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
right? We
for-
can still meet remotely,
Good point.
It's true.
so no snow day needed.
Jim, I think I need an updated, an electronic version of the updated memo, or maybe you sent it.
Yeah.
I'll
I told you I was gonna collect this, and then I'll send it back to you.
Okay, perfect.
Sweet.
Okay, I think,
Anything else?
Point of order, do we need to vote to dissolve the
I think
search
so.
committee? Or is that just me?
I thought it dissolved because our job was just to bring forth
No,
three.
the whole search committee, like technically I appointed everybody to the search committee. Do I need to dissolve
think
them?
so, because
Yeah,
there
you
could be
take
a
it, to take it off the books is probably a good
Yeah.
idea, to just
Yeah.
thank them for their work and they're done.
Motion to dissolve.
Well, wait a minute. Thank you for your work.
Well, he already
It was
said
all, I know, actually, Kate and David actually did a really good job of thanking them, and I thank them as well, but yes, okay. David, motion to dissolve.
Motion to
Is there a second?
So moved.
Seconded by Teresa, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that passes 5-0, thank you for your service.
Anne Marie, if we can just thank Kate and David as well for,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
leading that, and then, Jim, thank you for being our consultant and helping.
Excellent.
All right, anything else we need to discuss on this? Okay, so we already went over all of our other agenda items except school committee addenda. So we'll go do that quickly. Teresa?
No, because now I'm totally focused on the packet in front of me.
I know, me
So
too.
I do not have anything for school meetings agenda.
Kate, do you have anything this evening?
No, I look forward to things, and I think I see this as an opportunity for the district and for Norwood.
Joan?
I just want to thank the search committee. I don't know if folks know, but 3 of us just got all of this information. And we're very excited to, but from a first glance, it looks like that your work was thorough and wonderful. So I would like to thank the search committee.
David?
Nothing this evening, Madam Chair.
On to me, so I would also like to thank the search committee. I'd like to thank our school committee representatives to the search committee, who have done a wonderful job of keeping us updated, of running the whole working with Jim to run the whole process from soup to nuts. It was kind of lovely to not have to worry about it, because it was being done so well and so seamlessly in the background. So that was a real testament to the attention to detail, and then obviously the diligence of the committee as a whole. So thank you for that. But that brings us to the end of our evening. However, we do need to go into executive session. We will only return for the purpose of adjournment. I do need a motion to go into executive session.